So, hello everyone. Welcome again. As you heard, my name is Martin. I work as a product manager in Kentico. And today I'll be talking about something every product manager knows, and that's product backlog. But today I will tell you how we in Kentico stopped caring about it. But before we get into that, I have a question for you. And the question is, if that works. So I'll do that this way. No, this way. So the question is, especially you product managers in the room, how many of you are actually writing user stories for your team? How many of you are preparing all the necessary details for the development? Can you please raise your hand? Okay, quite some number of people. And my second question is, do you like it? Yes. Or would you like to spend your time doing something else, like focusing on the customer, on the interviews, researching the market? How many of you would like to do that instead? So you like writing user stories, okay. Okay, cool, cool. I didn't expect that, to be honest, but we can go with that. So, actually the reason why I'm asking is a bit selfish, and I want to brag a bit because the reason why I'm asking is I don't remember the last time I have written a single user story. And today I would like to share you our journey, how we got to that point. But in order to do so, we have to go back in time. We'll go back in time like two and a half years. And imagine an organization, development organization, that have several teams. Teams have 7 to 8 people. We have designers in the teams. We have scrum masters, and we have product managers who are preparing the stories, writing them, rewriting them, etc. And we are going by the scrum. Everything is awesome, sunshine and rainbows, right? Well, not really. The reality was a bit different. And for me, the reality was sometimes like this. Because I was really overwhelmed by the backlog preparation. I was not a product manager. I was rather a backlog manager. I was really preparing all the stories. I was writing them. I was rewriting them when the developers didn't like them. I had to prepare all the details. And I had literally no time for anything else. So when we were starting working on some new features, when we were working on some research, everything was done really last minute prior to the development. So this was an issue because, first of all, I was losing sleep over the backlog readiness because we had even KPIs for backlog readiness. We had to have at least 3 sprints and a half prepared for the teams, so the teams always know what they are going to be working on. So that was stressful. But we also didn't know much about the customers and about the market. And that started to be a really significant problem for us when we were launching a new product. Because without this knowledge, we would probably fail. So we needed to understand how the customers are working, what are their pains, what are their needs. And we needed time to actually do that. But we couldn't do that because we were maintaining the backlogs. So we realized we have to do something, and the solution was simple. Someone else has to do our job. So what we decided to do, and what we've done over the 2 years, is that we decided that we are going to hand over part of our responsibilities to the development teams. The developers and the team, they can do that. They can handle that. But it was a slow transition of handing over the backlog to the development teams. There were, I would say, 3 major phases. And each of these phases was slightly different. And today I will tell you about those 3 phases. So the first one was when we were really focused on backlogs. And it was the phase I described a few minutes ago, when we were really focused on the details and the preparation, and we were really overwhelmed. In this phase, our development organization was really focused on the team output. So our goal was to have the developers who code, who are always focused on development, so they have everything prepared and just can grab the story, work on it, and finish it and move to another one. So we need to prepare this backlog as effectively as possible. So we need to figure out how to do that and also save the time for us so we can focus on other things. So what worked for us and what we started to do in this phase is we started to organize epic splitting workshops. Now, what you can imagine behind epic splitting workshop? It was a meeting where I was together with some of the, let's say, senior developers, or sometimes even the whole team. There was usually the UX designer, sometimes there was a researcher. And what we did is we had this whiteboard, and we took the one feature that we were about to work on, and we split it into smaller chunks. And then those chunks were assigned epic owner, or chunk owner, or how you call it. And that was someone from the team. Don't worry about it. And that person from the team was then responsible for preparing all the necessary details. They were creating the stories, they were writing the details, the stories were fitting what they wanted, so I didn't have to rewrite them when they don't like them, because it was up to them now, not me. And it was their responsibility. So I saved some time by not writing user stories. What also worked for us in this phase was, just a second, dramatic pause, was we started organized, okay, so we started organized pre-groomings. Now, if you are familiar with Scrum, you know what grooming is. If you're not familiar with what Scrum is, grooming is a place where developers are providing estimates on the stories, how long it will take them. And we introduced something called pre-groomings. And it was, in our case, it was a quick meeting for 20 minutes where it was me, let's say 2 senior developers or tech leads from the team, and we went through the backlog, story by story, and we were discussing, all right, guys, is there something not clear in the story? Yes, no. And we went through the top, let's say, 20 stories, and then those guys took those stories to the grooming. That means that I didn't have to be there anymore, which saved me another at least 2 hours a week to work on something different. So, as I said, this phase was all about optimization, preparation of the backlog. But the biggest changes started to happen when we opted for something different. When we said that now the product managers are not going to be focused on the backlogs, but they are going to be focused on the roadmap. What that means? It means that we said, from now on, the product manager is not going to provide you with stories. He's going to provide you with the problem definition, the problem that we are trying to solve to the customer, and he's also going to provide you with description of the solution that's going to address this problem. Now, this led to 2 things. First of all, we had more time on researching the customer. We had more time to understand the real problems, the real needs, the real pains. But it also means that we needed to somehow provide more context to the team, because the team is now responsible for preparing all the details. So what we started to do is we started creating something we call problem definition. Now, here's a real example of one that I was working on. And the problem definition was a place where we gathered all the context necessary for the development. We put there links to the customer feedback. We put there description of the jobs. We put there some important information like how our competition is handling these issues. And then this input was used by development and the UX department. The UX guys used this input as something they based their design on, and then developers use this as means for getting necessary details. So I was not creating user stories anymore. I was still consulting them. I was still discussing how we can split the thing, how we can split the solution, but this was my main input to those guys. What also worked for us in this phase, I'll try this one more time. And, oh, it's working now. Awesome. So what was really working for us was involving team members into the research, especially when we were trying to figure out what is the real problem that we are trying to address. Usually, when you invite someone from the UX team, they are happy to do that because they like to learn about the users and about the problems. When you invite someone from the development, not that much. But when you have someone who's really enlightened in that team and who's willing to participate in that, from my experience, it was really helpful for them because they then understood better the customer, especially when we were trying to solve some complex problems and we didn't know really what's the motivation of the customer to do that. Having a developer or two on the call was really helpful, not only for me because I didn't understand all the technical stuff, but it was also important for them and useful for them because they learned something about the customer. Now, what's important to say here about this phase is this stage, is less optimized for the team's output. The developers will have to work on something else. They will have to participate on the calls. They will have to participate on the meetings where you are discussing the solution. They will have to prepare the solution. So they are not going to be working on the code 100% of time. So if you are aiming on increasing the output, this is something contradictory, right? But on the other hand, those guys should have now more insights about the customer problems, which was one of the goals we were trying to achieve as well. We wanted to have teams that understand what the customer is solving. But for us, this was still not enough. So we decided to opt it for something even more crazy, and we decided to focus on goals. So before I will tell you what that means is I'm going to give you a bit of context about our company. Right now, at this moment, we are in the market that is shaping. We have pretty tough competition, and it's really important for us to demonstrate that we are able to deliver the right value really fast. So what we wanted to do with this approach, we wanted to have teams who really understand the customers, who really understand the pains, but they're also able to deliver the value fast. So what we did is that we took the product that we have and we split it into different functional areas, and for each of these areas, we have defined business goals. Now, we also said the team is now not only responsible for the stories, he is not only responsible for preparation of the details, but you are guys now also responsible for the solution. So it is up to you now to design the solution, to think what's the minimal product that you can deliver to the customer that actually gives them value. Now, the product manager is responsible for actually, this is my old presentation, never mind. The product manager is now responsible for co-defining the goals. He defines that together with the stakeholders, and this goal is then used as a boundary for the team. He still advises the team how they should approach the problem. He still provides them with context, but he's not telling them, all right, you should address this. It is now up to the team. This is quite challenging because you need few things. You need people who have let's say, have senior mindset, or they are able to accept change because they need to start thinking differently. They need to start thinking in more iterative way, because in this approach, you are going to sometimes generate waste. You are sometimes going to experiment and you don't know the results because you are going to deliver different increments that might or might not add the value. But so you need someone who can accept this and work with this. And you also need to have really good understanding of the customer. But because you are not now focusing on the solution, you are not focusing on the backlog, you have more time on creating stuff like this. You have now time to create boards and value boards that covers the customer pains, that covers the customer gains. You have more time to do research. You have more time to understand the customer and the environment where the customer is operating. And this is also really useful because you can then use this as an additional input for the development team. And when you involve them in this, they should really have the deep understanding of the customer. So last thing I want to mention about this phase is that this phase is the least optimized on the team output. So if you are really aiming for, let's say, delivering the highest number of story points or the highest velocity, this approach will probably not be it, because the developers will spend time analyzing data. They will spend time analyzing feedback. They will spend time on talking to customers. Some don't like it, but eventually, when they do that, they really grasp the underlying problem. So let me wrap up my session, and I have 3 takeaways for you. Now, the first takeaway is the work won't magically disappear. If you want to have more time on other stuff as a product manager, as I told you, someone else will have to do that. Someone else will have to at least maintain the story creation. Someone will have to manage the backlog. You don't have to do that. It's totally feasible, I can tell you from my own experience. The second thing I wanted to share with you, and I want you to remember, is that the change won't happen overnight. It took us 2.5 years to actually got from the backlog managers to today's state. And we failed many times over the course of those 2.5 years, and it was not easy. But you should define what you are aiming for and then do small steps towards it. Which brings me to the last thing I wanna say. You have to figure out what is your goal. I mentioned several times during this course of this presentation that the output of each stage is different. And we went from the highest output of the team to the smallest one, but with the highest context. So what's working for us might not be working for you, and you have to figure out what is the thing that works for you and then optimize for it. It might not even work for us in the long term, and we might change it completely or abandon it. But at the moment, we think it's working for us, and you have to also figure out what's the thing that's worked for you, because it might not be the same as it is for us. And that's the last slide. Thank you very much for your attention, and that's it.